The research shows that kids who grow up with parents who cheat are twice as likely to cheat in their own romantic relationships. So if you're a kid who grew up with a cheating parent and you want a fulfilling love relationship, a committed love relationship, how do you beat those odds? Hi everyone, my name is Melissa. I'm a writer. I research and write extensively on the effects of parental infidelity on the kids. So beating those odds requires examining three things. The first is to examine what you believe about commitment in love relationships. The second is to examine how you cope with conflict in relationships. And the third is to explore how your parents' unhappiness affected you as a kid, if you're an adult now, or affects you now. So in order to understand how these are the three key solutions to not cheating in a love relationship, if you've grown up with cheating parents, let's look at the scholarly research. So research as far back as the 1980s has demonstrated that kids who grow up with cheating parents are more likely to cheat in their own love relationships. However, three studies most recently done in 2008, 2015, and 2017 really gave us some concrete data that kids who grow up with cheating parents are actually twice as likely to cheat in their own romantic relationships. So the question is, why? To answer this question, the researchers looked at 6 different factors. They looked at parental infidelity. They looked at the parents' relationship status, meaning are they married, divorced, or separated? They looked at how much the parents fought. They looked at how happy the parents were together. And they looked at the child's the child's own beliefs about infidelity and the role that the child's trust or confidence in their own love relationship played in whether or not they would cheat. And I'll link all of these research studies down below. They're also on my website, outgrowinfidelity.com/research. So here's what the researchers found. First of all, parent infidelity plays the largest role in determining whether or not the child of the cheating parents will actually cheat in their own love relationships. So what does that mean? So that means the child can grow up with divorced parents or they can grow up with parents that fight a lot, but neither of these will be as accurate a predictor as to if a child will cheat. Second, the belief that cheating is wrong does not actually stop the cheating. So what does this mean? So often I hear from kids who grow up with cheating parents who say, cheating is so wrong, I will never do it. That belief in and of itself will not stop you from cheating. Next, parent happiness or a child's perception of parents' happiness plays a surprisingly large role. As compared to parent conflict, a child's perception of their parents' happiness in their relationship has quite a large role. That is, a child who cheated in their own relationship is more likely to report that their parents were unhappy in their relationship. And finally, for some more bad news, the final thing that they discovered is that a child's trust or confidence in their own love relationship does not mean that they will not cheat. So the next question is, how can all this be? So the short answer is the researchers don't know. They did make some pretty educated guesses based on their research, and their primary guess is that kids who grow up with cheating parents get some very strong and often subtle messages about the acceptability of infidelity in a relationship. Additionally, and equally importantly, are the messages that kids learn about family communication when the family is in conflict, for example, when an affair comes to light. So what ends up happening is that these messages, as a kid, you internalize them and they form your own beliefs about relationships and communication, even if you're not consciously aware of it. So based on this research, my own personal experience, and the hundreds of people who've contacted me via social media since I started writing and posting about this, I've come up with 3 things that I believe that you, as a child of infidelity, need to look at in order to beat these odds. Okay, so the first thing you need to look at are the messages that you received from your family about infidelity and from your community about infidelity. So let me give you an example to illustrate. So let's say that you're a grown man and you believe that infidelity, cheating is wrong. However, you grew up with a dad who cheated on your mom, and you observed how that behavior hurt your mom and yourself. But you also observed how your dad's behavior was downplayed in your family, maybe even by your mom, in your community, as being, not a big deal, or men will be men. And let's say perhaps your dad was even quietly recognized in the community for being sexually attractive or a really fun flirt. So now you're in a bind because you see how your dad's infidelity hurt you and your mom, but you also observe how the community in some ways celebrated it, or at the very least downplayed it as being not that important. And maybe it's even considered cheating or having multiple sexual relationships is seen as part of manhood. So, like it or not, those conflicting messages or conflicting feelings are part of you, and left unquestioned, there's the possibility that it can steamroll over any of your own personal resolve to not cheat in relationships, or your belief that infidelity is wrong. The second thing that you need to look at is, how did your family and your parents cope with conflict in a relationship? So conflict is a part of any relationship, right? In a family or in a romantic relationship, and stressors can come from inside the family or from outside the family. So what often happens in cheating relationships is that one or both partners do not have the skills or the ability or the interest to cope with conflict. And it could be because it's too scary or overwhelming, or because they've never seen it modeled, or they're not interested in doing the work. Children of infidelity often observe that cheating is a way, or perhaps even the way, that their parents cope with conflict. You may recognize or intuit as a child how cheating was perhaps an escape hatch for one of your parents, or they used it as a weapon, or they used it as a means of expression, or as a way to fulfill a need. So like the previous example, observing your parents' infidelity as a tool to cope with conflict, coupled with never having been taught any healthy tools yourself, perhaps, you may be more likely to cheat simply because that's what you know, that's what you've seen. The third thing to look at is how your parents' unhappiness affects you and how it affects your ideas about your relationship. So as I said earlier, the researchers found that kids who grew up with cheating parents who then cheat in their own relationships were more likely to report that their parents were unhappily together. So here's some ideas to think about in terms of how you observed your parents' unhappiness. There's some possibilities, and I'm sure there are more. So for example, perhaps your parents' unhappiness together made you worry about them staying together. Maybe you worried about one or the other of them more particularly. Often children of infidelity worry a lot about the betrayed parent, but not always. Maybe it's hard to have a relationship with one or both of them because they are so sad, and being around that sadness all the time is just overwhelming. It's too much to tolerate. Or maybe their sadness or unhappiness frustrates you because to you it's a simple solution. Just break up or just go to marriage counseling. But for whatever reason, they don't see it that way. So some ways to think about your parents' unhappiness in terms of your own relationship. Maybe you are concerned about coming into that kind of sad relationship yourself, and so you're cheating to try to find the perfect relationship because you fear falling into what happened to your parents. Maybe you feel like you need your parents to be happy before you can be happy. Maybe you feel like you need your parents to have a better relationship or a better marriage before you yourself can get married. You feel some responsibility to them. Or maybe you want them to like who you're dating or who you are together with because You want some way to make them happy, or you want some way to continue to have a relationship with them while you also have a love relationship that's fulfilling for you. Okay, so now I've told you to examine these three things, and you may be saying, okay, so how do I examine them? Well, as a writer, I'm actually, obviously, a big fan of writing. Journaling, I think, can be super helpful. So I'm going to give you a few prompts to work with. I suggest sitting down with a piece of paper and a pen or a journal, setting a timer for 20 minutes, and just writing down what comes to mind when you hear these prompts. If you do it over time, you're going to come up with a few themes that you can work with. What are some of the messages that your family and community passed on to you about romance, relationships, and sexuality? What did you learn from your family about how to deal with conflict and disagreement in relationships, both love relationships and family relationships? How did you know that your parents were happy or unhappy? Did they tell you directly? Or was it more eye rolls and heavy sighs whenever they were together? What are the parts of their partnership that seemed to work, and what are the parts that did not? And continuing with this theme, how did their unhappiness affect you? What ideas did it give you about what you need in your own relationship? I'm going to use a personal example to try and bring all of this together. So I am a white, heterosexual, cisgendered woman. The culture that I grew up in expects that in a love relationship, a woman will defer to the needs of her male partner. It's also what I observed in my parents' relationship. This was considered normal. Before I examined and questioned this mandate for women in my culture, I would, in a relationship, keep my mouth shut about my needs because I wanted to be what a woman was supposed to be. Inevitably, however, I would have a need because needs are part of being human. Everybody has needs. But I would not feel I could voice that need directly in a relationship. So I would do it indirectly by cheating on my boyfriend. All of this before I got married, thank goodness. It would serve me to get what I needed from a partner without having to violate this cultural mandate that I had been given and maintain my sort of culturally accepted status as a woman. So in order to stop cheating, I had to look at this cultural value that I'd been given, and I had to reject it. It helped me realize why the cheating in many ways felt safer than being honest, because in order to be honest, I had to, first of all, identify what made me happy and what I wanted in a relationship, and then I had to have the bravery to stand up for it, which was not something I'd been taught was okay. So it's funny for somebody who works with words that finding those words was very hard for me. But in the end, that's part of what did it. That's part of what helped me find a happy marriage, because I was able to reject that cultural idea and to stand up for what my needs were and to be able to voice them. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please check out my videos on what to do when you've just found out that a parent is cheating and how to set boundaries with cheating parents.